My name is Sandy Golding, and I'm president of Beaches Watch. Very glad to have you here. Tonight's meeting is going to be a really good meeting, and before we get started, I'd like to say a few things. For those of you who are not familiar with Beaches Watch, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan civic organization here at the beach. We have been in existence since 2004, and our focus is educating and engaging citizens in the issues that come before our local elected officials, as well as our state elected officials. So before we get started, we have agendas. I hope you've picked them up so that you've got some information here. On the back is the contact information for these lovely gentlemen, as well as our local elected officials. So if you ever have any questions, comments, or concerns, you know how to get in touch with everyone. Also, I'd like to recognize some of the elected officials we have here with us tonight, besides our distinguished guests. We have from Jackson Beach, we have Councilwoman Janelle Wilson. And we also have from Neptune Beach, we have Councilman Scott Wiley in the back. We have Jackie Smith, who is with John Rutherford's office. Where did you go, Jackie? Oh, right here. And then we also have our 3 beach city managers here tonight. We're very proud to have George Forbes from Jacksonville Beach. We have Andy Hyatt from Neptune Beach. And I'd like to have the new city manager from Atlantic Beach stand up, Joe Garrity.
Joe Garrity!
So thank you all for coming tonight. Some quick announcements. Beaches Watch is starting our membership drive for 2018, and this is time for the early bird renewal. And if you get your membership paid before December 31st, you'll get entered into an opportunity to win a prize at our member social, which is always an awesome prize. So if you are interested, you can renew your membership with Eileen, who's sitting at the table over there. And then also, we have our annual give back donation that we do every December. And we recognize a deserving nonprofit here at the beach who is doing something to enrich the quality of life for our beaches citizens. So the deadline for nominating a nonprofit is this Friday, November 3rd. We would appreciate you guys getting your nominations in, and then we will be awarding the money to that nonprofit in December. So hope you will submit your nominations before the deadline. Also want to remind everybody, Veterans Day, our city offices are going to be closed Friday, November 10th. So you need to be aware of that. And then, as always, Beaches Watch is interested in having new faces get involved with the things that we're doing. We can always use board members for our board. We can also use people to help with our programs committee, help us put on meetings, organize meetings like this in our candidate forums. We also can always use people to help us with our membership committee or with our public relations and communications, and also city issues liaisons. So we have the information on the agendas here. If you would like to get involved, we don't ask a lot of you. Whatever you can do, we appreciate. And last but not least, our meeting in December will be Wednesday, December 6th, and it will be 7 o'clock here in this room. So do we have any other announcements real quickly before we move to our speakers? Okay, so I'd like to introduce. Tonight we have our State Representative Cord Bird, and then we also have from Neptune Beach, and then we also have our State Senator Aaron Bean. So what we're going to do is Representative Bird's going to start off. They're going to be talking to us tonight about the legislative session, which is starting in January, which is early. But they will be talking about the issues that are going to be coming up in the legislative session that will have an impact on our beaches. Mr. Bird will say a few words, and then Mr. Bean will as well, and then start with Fort Worth.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and thank you for everybody for being here tonight at the library. I was telling someone earlier that I was just here last weekend for the book sale. If you haven't come to the library book sale, please become a friend of the library. Come to the book sale. It's an awesome time. You stack up for your beach reading, so it's great. And thank you to the library for offering us this facility, this opportunity to talk to our constituents. And I want to thank Sandy and Beaches Watch for what they do. One of the things we talk about in the legislature is the observer effect. And when you watch something, you change behavior. And so it makes me think of, in the title of their name, Beaches Watch, they're watching the beaches, watching their elected officials. And that's a good thing, because as elected officials, we need you, the citizens, we need your input, we need you watching us to make sure we're staying on our toes and being responsive to your needs. So as Sandy said, we have the legislative session starting in January this year, January 9th. It is an early session. We've already had 2 committee weeks. And we will go back the next 2 weeks, so next Monday and the following 2 weeks, Senator Bean and myself will be over in Tallahassee in committee weeks. We'll have one in December and then kick off the session in January. So we are well underway in getting input from citizens and considering legislation. We're already hearing bills in committee. And one of the ones I want to talk to you tonight about is so I'm on the select committee for hurricane preparedness and relief. Our community, as you know, has been impacted twice in the last year. I mean, Jacksonville, the joke has always been, oh, we don't ever get hit with the hurricanes. That's a South Florida thing. But I want to thank, since we do have some of our elected city officials here from the beaches, the motto is 3 beaches, 1 community. And they did such an amazing, fantastic job. They deserve a huge round of applause. Because as we're hearing testimony in that committee from what's happened in other parts of the state, we were all affected differently, but Irma affected all 67 counties in Florida. But when I hear some of the bad things that happen in other places and what didn't happen here, it's because we have such amazing city officials. I mean, Beaches Energy does an amazing job. They get their power back on the fastest in the state of Florida. I mean, within hours, literally, most of the beaches had their power back on. George Forbes, that's a shout out to you for the outstanding work there at Beaches Energy. And good to all the elected officials. So my district covers all of Nassau County and the 3 Jacksonville beaches and all along Heckscher Drive. So I have the coast all the way from Georgia down to the St. Johns County line in Fernandina Beach. Highest storm surge in the state. I don't think most people realize that. Over 7.5 feet storm surge in Fernandina. But in working with our partners in the federal government, Jackie's here on behalf of Congressman Rutherford, we were in constant communication. As Senator Bean and myself, we were calling them, sharing information, calling Senator Rubio's office. They did an amazing job as well, and it really is a team effort and a partnership so that we can ensure the safety of the citizens of Florida. So we've heard a lot of testimony about the emergency operations, what happened at the state level. We've had testimony from the various utilities. Last week we had over 4 hours of testimony for the utilities and what we can do to harden our system and make sure that when we do lose power that it is down for the least amount of time, and how it impacted, the loss of power impacted some of the most vulnerable citizens in our communities. Next week we will hear testimony from the nursing homes, which obviously that got a lot of attention due to the loss of life in South Florida. So coming up next week, we'll hear, we're scheduling for 4 hours of testimony from assisted living facility operators and people impacted by the storms, because what they did, what happened in South Florida should not have happened. It's unacceptable. And so what I want to do, and I know Senator Bean as well, is we're looking for input from you. Please call our offices. We want to know what went right as well as what went wrong, so that we can learn from this. And because we're being asked to pass legislation, and one of the knee-jerk reactions of government is we had a crisis, let's pass a bunch of laws. I think we're doing it responsibly in the state legislature to say let's form these select committees, let's take the testimony, let's figure this out. We have a whole other year before the next hurricane season comes. Let's make sure we're not just rushing to pass legislation just to look like we're doing something, but actually getting the policies right. So we are partnering with our local officials, but we also need input from you. And one of those things that we're looking at is shore protection and hardening of the beaches and the dunes. The city stepped up last year. We were fortunate that there were dredges offshore after Hurricane Matthew, and we were able to restore the dunes. They were damaged again in this year's storms, followed by the northeaster shortly thereafter. So I was in touch with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection just this week, trying to find out what are we allowed to do as local communities, what can we do, so we don't want to interfere because you run afoul with federal law, state law, and that's part of the problem with FEMA reimbursement. Is there are so many rules and regulations and agencies and departments and pools of money and pots of money. We haven't even been paid, our communities haven't been paid for what happened in Matthew last year. And so we are really pushing hard. We've got the information and we're trying to make sure that the cities get reimbursed for what they spent last year, and now let's get the money for this year. But it's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork, and that's one of the goals that I want to try to do is to streamline that process. Because we live in the greatest place, greatest state in the country, greatest place in that state, and we love the beaches. We live here for a reason, and we want to make sure that it remains as beautiful a place as we know it is. And I want to welcome Mayor-elect Ellen Glasser, who just walked in. That's right. That's what we do. That's what we do. Oh, and it's funny because typically I follow Senator Bean, and if anybody who's seen Senator Bean speak, you know that's an impossible task to follow him. So I'm fortunate tonight that I get to go first. One of the other things I think we're going to be looking at in the legislature this year is the Forever Florida money. So a few years ago, we passed a constitutional amendment in the state to ensure that monies go to protect our natural resources here in Florida. I mean, it's one of our greatest resources. Ecotourism is a booming industry. It's very important. But what's happened is the focus has been on Lake Okeechobee in South Florida, and they're getting all the attention. But under Senator Bean's leadership and Senator Bradley's leadership, we in Northeast Florida are saying, no, that money's got to come back here. So we are actively pushing to ensure that the St. Johns River is protected, the beaches are protected, our wetlands are protected, because they are vital to our not only our economy, but our way of life. So that's a really important issue that we're working on. There's so many bills that have been filed last year. Over 3,000 pieces of legislation were filed in the Florida legislature. This year, we're already hearing legislation. Aside from some of the environmental things we're dealing with, one of the other big issues is going to be criminal justice reform. It's been an idea whose time has finally come. I think it's a bipartisan issue. It used to be the criminal justice reform was more of maybe a liberal or left issue. I know, speaking with some of my colleagues on our side of the aisle, that it is an idea whose time has come. It's bipartisan, and we can do better. We can't incarcerate our way out of the problems that we face as a society. And so I think there are some innovative and creative ideas, and that's what's great about living in a federal system where you can look at what other states have done, what they've done right, what they've done wrong, and try to implement those policies here. Another issue, and I might throw this one to Senator Bean because it's going to be a hot topic this year, is the Airbnb, the bed and breakfast, the legislation dealing with vacation rentals. I know there are very strong opinions on both sides of those, and we're going to try to get that right this year so we have one standard policy for the state of Florida. But I'm sure you'll have some questions about that tonight. So I've probably spoken longer than I wanted to, so I really want to throw it to y'all for questions, and so I'm going to turn it over to Senator Bean.
Hooray, thank you very much. A very good and Beaches Watch family. It's Senator Bean, and it is an honor to be with you. Thank you for letting me be your senator. And first of all, I know that you're passionate about government because Game 7 of the World Series is going on, and you were here to learn about your state government. So I appreciate that too. I first want to brag on Representative Byrd. You wouldn't know that it's his rookie year because he put big numbers, and the respect is out for Cord Byrd. He carries himself very well, like a veteran legislator. So Cord Byrd, what a great pleasure it is working with you. The beaches, you're the hometown boy from Neptune Beach, but all of the beaches claim you as rightly they should. So much going on, so much happening right now as we are just 2 months away from the legislative session. It seems like I've just been still on the circuit. Many of you, I look around and see you've been at least one or two of our debriefs of what happened last year's session. And I think, Jackie, you've probably been to more than your share of hearing me tell all the things that happened last year. Greatest disappointment of last year, and Scott Wiley is back. His number one priority for Neptune Beach was drainage improvement. Corbett Bean put that in the end zone, and we were there until it was vetoed. And we sold our rear ends off to paint the message that Neptune Beach and the beaches need just a little bit of help, as that money was going to be matched, and it's going to do great things, and we can still do great things. Jack's Beach and George Forbes has a tremendous record where we came together and partnered with DOT and is making millions of dollars of repairs of some of the roads we all travel to get here tonight, that we're making those behind the scenes, and we're hoping to do the same for the other cities to make sure that that we get our fair share. That's what we want. We want our fair share, which is what. And Mayor-elect Glasser, if you want to sit in the very back, you got to come extra early, or they're going to make you come up front. But it's good to see you. Representative Byrd and I just last week, though, met with the mayors and city managers of the beaches, and once again coordinated our efforts. We're still working on a handful of items to make sure that when January 9th, when kickoff happens, that we're ready and we know exactly what we need to work on to make sure that we're all covered. And let me tell you, George Forbes is very thorough. Joe Garrity jumped in like he's a pro and been here forever too with the list. And Andy, it's good to see you as well. So we're working on those projects as well. There's good news out there, because I think there is a renewed sense of the environment, which is why we love the beach. And by the way, I'm a beaches guy too. It just happens to be Fernandina Beach. But we live here for a reason. There's something special about it, and we want to make sure that we have the resources to keep it special. And a renewed sense of attention on Florida Forever, which is both a couple of key legislators who have some weight. And I'm not just talking about Jack Gladwell, I'm talking about legislative weight, that the muscle that can get that happen, have proposed major funds, including for Florida Forever, to buy some of our most sensitive land. We spent 4 hours today. How about that? 4 hours in the Jacksonville City Hall listening to over 50 speakers that came and presented their opinions on what state government should do and what we should focus on. And Jim McCarthy from the North Florida Land Trust made a pitch to make sure Florida Forever is funded. Now, I asked him, Jim, we fund it, but the money seems to go to South Florida. We need a fair way to do it. He said, Senator Bean, Senator Bean, that's a great question. That's important to acknowledge. But he said, you know what, there's an independent ranking of all projects, of all sensitive lands across the entire state. Number one deals with the St. Johns River. So we fund that, put money in that fund. And if they follow the guidelines as they should, then some of that money is going to come back to Northeast Florida, and then everybody moves up the list. And we think that's something very exciting we're going to do. Senator Lightfoot, another key senator, has proposed major, please, no one tell Senator Lightfoot I made a joke, because I'm calling him big in stature is what I'm calling him. But and he is he's a very influential senator, and he has proposed a major fund for beach strengthening. I don't want to call it dune restoration, but it's beach hardening, so to speak, to bring repair money to the beach where cities could partner with the state. That's what we want. The cities, you have a little bit of resources that the state would partner with, and then that's where Jackie and Congressman Rutherford do their magic, that we can draw down federal dollars, because beach renourishment is expensive, but it's a proven science, and thank goodness it was there for these last storms, because that's what a dune is. A dune is protection from that ocean, which has a mind of its own and can do anything. So we're going to make sure that's there. Those are big things in the environment. As Cord mentioned, let me give you two things that are on the horizon that are going to be big subjects for next year. One is reform on the opioid epidemic right now. Maybe you know somebody, and my odds are that you do know somebody who has a challenge with those pills. Those pills are so addictive. You know, if you take them for between 7 and 8 days, you become addicted to it. And as a society, we now realize there is a tremendous cost with those pills. I proposed a bill, and hopefully it'll start the dialogue, that says we need to look at a limit on how much we write. If you have a pain, then maybe not a 30-day supply or a 45-day supply, but maybe a 3 or 7 is where we need to look at it. We need to say to our doctors that if you do write those types of prescriptions in your normal course of education, of continuing education, then there needs to be some focus on how powerful these pills are. We need to require our doctors to look at a drug management database, which we have, but is seldom used, to make sure that somebody gets this pills hasn't had it filled several times over. You would think that happens, but it doesn't. But if we have a bill to say you need to look around and make sure this person really should have this pill, are there alternatives besides these pills? Things that we're going to look at. There's also, our governor has proposed some money to help people in recovery that deal with these pills. That's going to be a big issue. It's probably one of the top 3 issues that come before the legislature here. And it touches everywhere. I'm talking to Sandy about things that touch the beaches. That touches the beaches. And I've been to Mission House and others that have drug dependency, and it's right here in our backyard. And it's your neighbors that you don't think have a problem, but it's there because it's everywhere. The other thing is this: you've moved to the beaches. You've moved to the beaches because it's a great quality of life. You didn't move next door to the Holiday Inn. With new technology, though, there's new technology that next door could be turned into the Holiday Inn. There are new apps and new computer programs that allow anybody to rent their house out. Now, I know firsthand, there's 2 sides of the story. On one, we live in America. We have private property rights. I should be able to do with my property as I see fit. I understand that. And I weighed that. I've weighed that. I also know that we also have the private property right of quiet enjoyment. And so I've sat through, as a community affairs member, 3 hours, one meeting, and then another hour and a half of others of experts that have come and testified that this is great or this is challenging. And so we're looking for a happy medium of how you and your neighbors can utilize the home sharing network that's now coming out, and doing it in a way where people can enjoy it, but also where it's not gone too far where we don't abuse that. I don't know, the happy medium is what I'm looking for. I don't know how to say that, but a happy medium. I think it's out there. We did find a happy medium with a similar type of legislation that took over 6 years to pass, and that's ride-share legislation. Many cities, in fact, we have 410 cities, 67 counties, and they all dealt with transportation companies differently. Some sold medallions, some didn't care, some did everything, and everybody had a different thing. And I always, there's my phone right there, that's what I'm grabbing. My son, who's a millennial, he's a millennial, and said, "Dad, there's a big problem here. You say, don't drink and drive, but look what this says." And he showed me his phone. He had called Uber, and it said, "Uber is not recognized and not allowed in this is his message, is not allowed in the city of Fernandina Beach. Please contact your city commissioners and ask them to bring Uber in." So that wasn't just for millennials, but all of our record number of visitors now are facing similar things with everybody. So we passed last year. It was landmark. It was new legislation that allowed everybody to recognize those types of ride-sharing apps and network, but yet bringing in insurance requirements and safety requirements where if you do ride one, then you know that there's a reasonable degree of safety. Not everybody, but trying to have a fair playing field. That's what we're trying to get to. The governor has proposed record amounts of money for the environment, for beaches, for criminal justice reform, as Corbett has mentioned. That's taking front stage. There'll be a whole lot of other ideas that come. I filed bills everywhere from pro bono attorneys for kids getting court costs covered to having a Secretary of State elected by the people rather than appointed as it is now. That's just a gambit. I think we filed almost 24 bills already, or in the process of doing that. So again, looking forward to working with you, looking forward to taking your questions as we launch the legislative session 2018, starting January 9th. And let's kick off our questions right here. Yes, ma'am, followed by right here. So, Sandy, if there's any way, I think we have one mic. I'll give you the mic, and then either I or Representative Byrd will try.
Thank you, and thank you both for your service to our community in the state. I appreciate it. And am I mistaken, or were you just selected chairman of the Duval delegation?
Today, chairman of the Duval delegation.
We're very happy about that. And I am speaking on behalf of the libraries. I'm on the board of trustees, and Josh Messenger is the president of the branch, the Beaches Branch and Friends. So we came last year hoping to get funded for our Career Online High School, which had been funded for 2 years and not, unfortunately, this past year. And also our library funding from the state, which is wonderful because it's unencumbered in many ways, was cut back to, now we're back at like the lowest it's been since like 2008, I think. So I want to know, what can we do? We're in the library now. It's been renovated. It looks wonderful. We use it constantly, but we're not open enough hours here, of course. So what can we do? I know there are other pressing problems as well, but this is important as well.
And tell me your name.
Sybil.
Sybil, you did a great job, Sybil. Thank you very much for the question. And I see Jackie in the back. Jackie invited me to story time at the Pablo branch right up the street. It's a great library. This is a great library. All are great libraries. So get involved. Jennifer Gilpott, is there a Jennifer
Giltrop.
Giltrop spoke today at the legislature at the hearing and did a great job too of illustrating the bang for the buck that we get. But I tell you what, there's nothing more exciting than going to story time or coming here and seeing a packed house in our library. That's what the founders of libraries thought. It would be a great place for community gatherings, which is whatnot. The pots that Sybil mentioned, all libraries across the state share. We want to make sure that there is enough there. In years past, we've struggled just to maintain it, but this year I know the proposal is to go a little bit ahead so we can do some other things.
Well, I remember, Sybil, you came and saw me in my office last year to talk about these issues. No, I remember, thank you. And that's what we need. We need, if you're an advocate of the library, contact us, contact your state officials, let them know the importance. I think Senator Bean would agree, it's going to be a tough budget year in Tallahassee. I mean, we're $500 million in the hole already from the hurricanes. We were already going to be probably right out of shortfall, maybe a little bit in the black, but it's going to be really bad this year as far as I think. There's going to be a lot of budget fights. And so if you're passionate about an issue, get in there and be an advocate for it. I mean, if you've heard me speak before, you know I'm a fan of the Founding Fathers. Ben Franklin was the one who said we needed libraries and established those. And they're part of our history, they're part of our tradition. There are some that think, well, technology has negated the need for libraries, that because of the internet, we don't need them anymore. I disagree with that. I live right around the corner from here. My wife brings our 3-year-old up to the library and they sit and read books. There's so many other things than just checking out a library book that happens in a library. It really has become a community center and a place where the entire community can gather for events such as this, for continuing education, for job training. And when I come in, I see people on the computers and they're filling out applications for a job and learning. So there are amazing things here that are happening at the libraries, and I know Senator Bean and I are both advocates, and we'll continue to fight for you all. Sir.
Hi, my name's Candace, and I wanted to ask both of you, you spoke about the Florida Forever Fund, and the governor's proposing $50 million for the purchase of land. You both mentioned about restoration of the beaches dunes and for St. Johns River. How much money would you propose should be spent on purchase of conservation land? And do you think more than $50 million should be spent based upon the 33% tax stamp that's collected each year?
You go first.
Yeah, you can go first.
Candace, first of all, we went to the polls several years ago, actually said, I'm trying to think how I voted on that. But the important thing is you as a state voted, we need to buy sensitive lands and where it's a dedicated source. So Candace is right that the legislature haven't really, I think, fulfilled that mission in putting that money. We put money in, and money doesn't go as far as you think it does. So the proposal, the $50 million, is that enough? It probably isn't, but it's a huge, giant step. It's a great step forward. This is in addition to the separate pot of money would be beach renourishment. That's totally separate. We've done money for springs renourishment and others. That money has come out of the same pot. But more importantly, the discussion is focused back where it should be on purchasing land. Purchasing land that will take that, particularly the environmentally sensitive land. Jim McCarthy today said 1 acre of wetlands purchased and put aside can store, this is a big number, but it's per Jim McCarthy from the North Florida Land Trust, 1.5 million gallons of water. That's where it can hold when it fills up, which is a big number. But more importantly, countless critters and fishes and all kinds of things need a place to grow and rehab and whatnot. So there's a side benefit for that, not to mention the beauty. So this is the year that we get back in the habit, and once that happens, then hopefully we can add to it down the road, Candace.
I think you answered it.
Very good. Yes, sir. Right here.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Sam Hall, and I'm concerned about our public education. Here at the beaches, we have some of the best schools. We have all the 8 schools, maybe with the exception of 1 or 2, okay? But now, it's being proposed that some of the state dollars will be drawn down to pay for private schools, or let's say charter schools, and that's called the HOPE program.
Yes.
I think Seattle schools and stuff because that. But anyway, that's not mentioned, but help me understand what this is all about.
Very good. I'll take all of them.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Sam, for that question. That was a big fight in the legislature last year. It was a priority of Speaker Corcoran, what we call the Schools of Hope.
Yeah.
Charter schools are considered public schools, and so the theory was that, the idea is that some of our public schools, fortunately not here at the beaches and not in Nassau County, because Nassau County is an A-rated district, St. Johns County is A-rated, the schools in the beaches are A-rated. But the thought was there are some places, both in Duval County and around the state, some of the larger urban areas, where the schools are underperforming and have underperformed for years and years and years, and those students have suffered because of that. So we as the legislature decided that competition in all things, and I really believe this, competition is a good thing, even for schools. And I was a public school teacher in Miami, so I have some experience in that, in the public school world. I'm a product of public schools. I love public schools, but they're not all the same, and they're not all doing what they need to be doing. And in fact, during this debate, I think it was the mayor, maybe in Tampa, maybe in that area. I don't want to say something bad about the wrong person, but somewhere on the west coast of Florida. And he said, well, we don't need this legislation. Give us 10 more years. Give us 10 more years and we'll get this right. That means if you have a child in that school district that's in 2nd grade, after they graduate, they'll get it right. We as a legislature felt we can't condemn those children to substandard education. And so this isn't trying to diminish the public schools. It's hopefully a spur to get all levels of education. I'm an all of the above guy. Homeschool, charter school, private school, public school. I'm a believer in parents having the choice to fit the needs of their child and what's best for them. So the idea is to spur that competition and so that we can bring all the schools up. But one of the things I have heard the concerns of our school districts and our superintendents that are doing it the right way. And what I would like to look at is, can we exempt them, the ones that are getting it right, from some of the mandates and for some of the more, what you would consider punitive measures, because it really isn't fair to the districts like we have at the beaches and in Nassau County that are doing it right. That was a long answer to that question, and Senator Reed jumped in on there.
No, I am with you. Part of that HOPE legislation included additional resources for the struggling schools. And Duval County just had 7 schools that got the attention that had been chronically failing, but they got an additional $2,000 about per each student at that school. But even if the schools, listen, I've got 3 kids that all have gone to public schools. They're all different. And even if the school is top rated, if it doesn't touch the life of that student, it's not good. And we want to make sure that there's choice and options for all kids. Let me brag on Fletcher. Last month, I helped cut the ribbon. This is just mind-boggling how great this is. ViStar opened a branch inside Fletcher High School. It's inside Fletcher High School. It's a real branch. It's run and staffed by the kids. The manager is a student, is a 17-year-old junior that is the branch manager that runs the branch. So during the summer, they actually work at other branches, but then when the school's in, they run that. It's open during lunch, and there's like an open hour where everybody comes. So teachers, whatnot. I actually have an account at ViStar, so I was just going to test it when it was open there. Sure enough, it is on the money. It's exciting things that are happening with our public schools, but we just want options and want choices, and that is what the School of Hope is all about. In the back row, yes ma'am.
I love Fletcher. My 2 children graduated from Fletcher, but I teach on the west side of the high school, and I think they got our ViStar, because about 40 years ago we were promised a ViStar that we have not gotten. And I wonder, do you really think taking away resources from public schools really helps those struggling schools?
Well, first of all, it was a plus sign for the other schools, a plus sign. Listen, there's 2 ways to look at education. To me, this is my personal opinion, is do we want to protect a system at all costs, or do we want to do what's best for the individual student? And I'm an individual student guy, and that's what we want. So again, the additional resources went to struggling and chronically failing schools. We want them to do well, and if you're at one of those, the help is on the way with rescue. But sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's leadership or looking at it differently, and that's what we want to do. So for Schools of Hope, which are proven charter schools that come to struggling areas, challenged areas, there's no right or wrong answer. Listen, I've been booed off the stage by teachers that say, I don't care about public education, and that nothing could be further from the truth. But the sad reality is being forced and stuck in a school that is not doing well and having no other choices. If you have means, then you can go to other places, but if you don't, we heard from Step Up from students today. That was a presenter today at the delegation. Step Up for Students is an organization that takes private money and gives it to students to go to these schools that are private schools. It's just choice. So we don't want to take away from public schools. There was money given and allocated to public schools, but we just want to make sure that we have options for our kids.
Right, and I agree. I'm a special education teacher, so I've dealt with charter
There's a
schools.
special place in heaven for special education teachers, by the
Right, that's
way.
on the west side, but,
There's a special place in heaven for teachers on the west side too. You got 2 special places.
I mean, this year alone, in the first 9 weeks, we got 2 students whose parents thought they were making a choice to send their child to a charter school. One was a behavior issue. Their solution to that was to put that student into special ed classes. And so he comes back with credits that we can't transcribe towards a standard diploma. The other parent was also very unhappy and feels like her son wasted a year at this charter school. So I agree, choice is good.
And it goes both ways. It sounds like public schools would have been a much better choice for those, and it goes both ways.
But I, in my department, we're down in teachers, so we can't provide the services that we would like to provide the students that are coming to us. So,
Very good.
think about that.
Ms. Kathy, did you have a question? Yes, you did.
Kathy Berry, I live in the city of Lake Beach. As a strong proponent of home rule, I understand the benefit for Share Ride, making that a statewide program, but I don't really understand the push to regulate short-term rentals statewide. Each community is different and has its own needs, so can you give me your thoughts on why that would be a benefit to us to have it regulated on the state level?
Well, Kathy, that's a great question, and I'll take it. It's a great question, and I don't want to advocate one side or the other. I was the deciding vote last year, so there's 7 in community affairs, 7 senators. It came down to 3-3, and I went down on it because I got mayor's blood. I come from, as Joe Garrity and I share the same plaque on the wall which says, thank you for your service, Mayor of Fernandina Beach, and I served on the city commission. And so, Kathy, I was with you. I was with you to say that what was proposed last year was too strong. I'm looking at Mayor-elect Glasser. You're going to have a plaque coming to you too, in many years from now. I'm looking for a balance. Like the ride share, though, you can only say no for so long before people do it anyway, before it just overwhelms it. So I'm looking for trying to get the right happy medium. We heard from people that it's mind-boggling to me that you can just put it online, and all of a sudden people will rent a bedroom. You can still be home, they just want your bedroom, which is totally foreign to me. Or you want to go out of town for the weekend and they'll take the whole house. There's a balance. We saw pictures of a house that had 36 cars in front of it. We had a gentleman say that he's called the police numerous times on his neighbors because it's just not what he signed up for. We heard from others that say this is a valuable part of me making the mortgage is subletting and becoming a online bed and breakfast, so to speak. So I don't know what the answer is, Kathy. I'm trying to find, and I hopefully will see it because it's going to be an ongoing debate. I totally respect the city's right to home rule. There's another proposal right now that would really end CRAs as we know it. CRAs, which is a community redevelopment, is it act or agency? Yeah, so there's both right there. Right now there are 2 in Jax Beach that are doing phenomenal. They're doing phenomenal. But not all players, not all cities are managed by George Forbes. In South Florida, I have to acknowledge it's a totally inappropriate use of funds. Now, I'm not making this up, okay? This is what a CRA did in South Florida. Hired a rapper to do a concert. Is it Pitbull? Is that yeah, Pitbull. Pitbull is in the headlines lately. But that's just totally inappropriate. So to counteract that, there's legislators that say we'll end it all, and that I've met with the City Leader of Jax Beach, and it would really disrupt Jax Beach. And that is home rule, and it's a tool in the toolbox for cities to tackle blighted areas. And Jax Beach has 2 areas that you wouldn't know, but that was the secret to their revival was a CRA, and so. We're going to fight on that one too. So Kathy, the long story short, before I hand it off to Representative Burr, I don't know the answer. I just haven't seen it yet, but trying to have a happy balance. If we took a poll in this room tonight, which we will not do, but if we did, 71% of people in this room would say, I want the right to rent my house if I so desire it. This man wouldn't, but that's what the latest polls say. 71% of, maybe not in this room, 71% of Floridians support the right to do that. So what's that happy balance? I don't know. Maybe somebody does. George Forbes, what say?
Just a fill in for Kathy. I mean, one of the problems.
George, I got a microphone for you. Tell everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, George Forbes.
Preempted local governments from regulating them about 5 years ago. Now, if you already had regulations, then you're allowed to keep them. But anybody without regulations weren't allowed to regulate vacation rentals. There are places in Florida where big big vacation rental companies are going into residential neighborhoods, buying up homes and making them year-round vacation rentals with parties and everything every night that goes with them. Now, when I was 18 years old, I would have thought that was a great idea, but now that I'm 23, I don't think it's a good idea. So my point is, the problem I just hope, and I know you two will know, is that we can't be a great state without great cities. And so we're for allowing the state to have some regulations on vacation rentals, because today, like Jackson Beach, we couldn't anyway, because we didn't have any regulations in place at the time we were preempted. So we're for ending the preemptions and allowing cities to have regulations and ordinances to meet their own needs. One size fits all usually doesn't work. That's all.
Right, George, that's right. Kathy, you got that? It's going to be a hot topic for next year for sure.
I was going to,
Yeah, jump in.
just real quick. So I think one of the things, what I support on the vacation rentals is, and as I understand the legislation, and I've seen the current version, so it may be a little different from what we voted on last year. But as I see it, what we're going to do is just say, you can have it, that the city can't ban them. But as I understand it, the cities will still be able to regulate noise, pollution, garbage, those types of things. So I'm for saying, as a state, we want to protect the property rights, which is a constitutional right. We have constitutional rights on our property. So we want to say, you are allowed to have them, but then the cities will enforce their own codes. Each city would have their own codes to be able to enforce them. As Senator Bean mentioned, what happened in South Florida. I mean, it's just kind of a running joke. I sound like a broken record if you heard me speak before, but not everybody is blessed with the great leaders that we have in Neptune, Jackson, Atlantic Beach. I mean, and that's not just because they're here in the room. It's because it's true. I mean, we sat through hours and hours and hours of testimony about the horror stories that are happening in South Florida. I lived down in Miami. My parents who were here were down there for 35 years. They could tell us stories about what happens in South Florida. So a lot of the issues that we have to deal with in the legislature are problems that happen in Palm Beach County south. Sometimes it is a blunt instrument that we have at the state level, and preemption is our tool. But what I support is saying, okay, we can have them, but then let's regulate them, because we did hear stories about many hotels and people coming in and gutting homes and putting 10 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms in there. That's not what we signed up for. So I think we will be able to strike the right balance, but that's my take on it. And I want to, Christine Hoffman, Jacksonville Beach City Council, and snuck in. So we're asking for other local elected officials to just get it right. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm also from South Florida. When I read a report about juvenile justice down there and some of the juvenile justice facilities that are privately owned and where kids were dying, I really thought it was just South Florida, and because I guess, that's where I would expect it. But it said it was all through the whole state of Florida, and I was wondering, when you said you're going to talk about criminal justice reform, does that include the juvenile justice system in Florida and cleaning that up and getting rid of some of the sadistic situations? My name's Martha.
Hi, Martha. Thank you. So one of the committees I sit on, I'm vice chair of the Justice Appropriations Committee. So anything in the judicial silo comes through us. Just last week, I was in Graceville, Florida, which is in the Panhandle, touring one of the private prisons, and I've also toured some of the Department of Corrections run facilities, and there is a marked difference in the two. And there's some very innovative things happening. Now, this was an adult prison, not a juvenile prison, but it was clean. We visited classrooms. We were able to watch the inmates as they're learning skills. So when they get out, we were able to talk to some of them, and they were telling us the difference between the state-run facilities and the private facilities. And when they're a year from release, they're going into training and counseling about how to deal with what happens when you get out. So it's not, here the gate opens, good luck with your life, because once they get back into their communities, hanging out with the friends, they repeat the cycle, and the private prisons have a lower recidivism rate. And so that's something we're looking at. Those are also big issues. I mean, that takes up, corrections in the state of Florida is the 3rd largest budget item. It's a huge amount of money that we're spending. So we are looking at innovative ways to divert people from the criminal justice system The civil citations are working, and we heard testimony about that today, with juveniles, civil citations, instead of arresting them and going to jail. And we're looking to expand civil citations for adults. Texas, Georgia, last week I was at a presentation by a state rep from Georgia, and they're not much different, probably philosophically, than we are, and they're doing some amazing things on criminal justice reform. So that is definitely something that I'm keeping my eye on, because we do as a state, if we're going to punish someone, there's a constitutional right there not to be abused while incarcerated.
That's a great answer. Martha, you are right on your article that you read. There was an expose by the Miami Herald that went through a lot of other newspapers. It painted the juvenile justice system in Florida as a disaster. I met personally with the Secretary of Juvenile Justice. She acknowledges that there are challenges. She also acknowledges that some of those were already, they went back 15 years and some have already been corrected. She personally has let go of some of the employees We're talking about beating kids, doing bad things to kids in juvenile, not good. And it's tough to be a teenager. It's tough to be a teenager behind bars, but then it's tough to endure some of the atrocities that our government has done. Every single one of those that she assured me were being addressed. They were fired, contracts being reviewed, of whatnot. It's gotten the whole state's attention. I think the best reform for criminal justice is not, it should be the last thing is to introduce a kid to that system. Any and all, part of reform is just not entering kids into that system. We've got a great success with teen court, great success with veterans court, great success with drug court, where you're held accountable for your actions as a teenager. You're held accountable, but yet you don't go into the system. If you want to make sure everybody is whole from your crimes, paying them back, then you're also going to have to pay back the community with community service and whatnot, pay your court costs, hold everybody accountable. Those things are working. There's still some bad kids that do need to be locked up. We want to have a safe society, but there is a gentle balance. Reform also is for some minor, this is going to sound kind of different, but minor drug crimes right now. One of the first things we do with minor drug crimes is say you've got to pay all of these court costs. Oh, and by the way, we're suspending your license. Which taking away somebody's ability to make a living causes so many other problems, not the least of which is paying their court costs. So that's part of reform too, to say if you're truly sorry and truly not a menace to society or yourself, let's look at alternative ways. It is extremely expensive, as Corbett has already said, to lock somebody up, and just the horrors of that. So if we can do that. So criminal justice reform, I know I'm on camera, and I just want everybody to know, we can still be tough on crime, but still pursue reform. There's better ways of doing it in the state of Florida. We're gonna find. We may not have the perfect answer, but we're gonna take a step towards a better way of doing things while still locking people up that want to do us harm. There are those kind too. So we want to have that balance, but we can make some changes in it. Question, yes, sir.
Ken Whitten. I was wondering, are you looking at changing any of the mandatory minimums?
Ken, that is a great question on mandatory minimums. I did a bill 2 years ago. Cord was a supporter. Not 2 years ago, because Cord was not there 2 years ago. But was it? Yeah, exactly. He was there right here. That's what it was. 1020 Life, which, by the way, is such a great bill. 1020 Life, it virtually, we have some of the lowest crime rates ever. Because of that reform. If you have a gun in a commission of a crime, you're doing 10 years. If the gun goes off during that crime, it's 20 years. If you kill somebody or somebody dies, it's automatic life, mandatory. It worked so well. It was funny after that, because it's pretty intense. It worked so well, I laughed. There was a guy that held up a liquor store in South Florida with a bow and arrow. So he didn't want to use a gun because he knew that if he got caught with a gun, that was an automatic 10 years. So I don't know what happened to him, but it worked. The net we cast with that legislation, though, although it caught a lot of people, it caught people that that shouldn't be there. It was the dolphin of the turtle net, because there was a lady here that had no criminal record, yet fired 3 warning shots.
Right.
Ring her up 60 years. And it's a mom, never been in trouble, not to say the least. We're punishing her kids, her family, or whatnot. In South Florida, there's another gentleman, the same thing, never before has he been in trouble, yet he fired the gun, and they said there's nothing new. We exempted 2 years ago the change to minimum mandatory, the ag assault. Took it out of the of that legislation, Ken. And so firing warning shots is aggravated assault, doesn't necessarily have you. You can still be charged with aggravated assault. So if you do, if I fired at you, Ken, or your feet or something, or that's a crime. But it doesn't necessarily, if I'm firing a warning shot, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to jail for that. So there's talk. With, as Martha's question earlier, with reform, that's one of the things that's looking. It's worked too well, and the net that it's cast with mandatory minimums is catching people that otherwise couldn't call, because there's nothing a judge can do once there's that mandatory. You're done. I mean, there's no flexibility. So we're looking at that. But again, still being tough on crime, but yet looking at reform to save society and save an innocent being that could be us or our uncle or loved one or somebody that just did something not smart at the time. But that's it. Court, what do you say?
Yeah. So in my day job, I'm an attorney. I practice in courts all over Florida, federal courts as well, and we need to let judges judge. And we have great judges in the state of Florida for the most part. I mean, like any profession, there's good and bad. I've been all over the state, and we have really good judges, and I want to allow them to judge. And I think I'm right on this. There will be legislation that will allow judges some leeway from the mandatory minimums. And Senator Bean is exactly right. This isn't. I'm a tough on crime guy, but there's people we're scared of and people we're mad at. People we're scared of, let's go ahead and lock them away, the really worst of the worst. But the people we're just mad at that made a mistake, one of the things I do in my practice is civil rights restoration. And so I see a lot of people, and I say, it's kind of like the knucklehead. You made a mistake. You were hanging around with the wrong crowd when you're 20 years old. And I have people that are 30, 40, 50. Some of them live in our community that are small businessmen and women that are members of their church and community and doing wonderful things, but they're not full participants in society because of a mistake they made 30 years ago. And so I think if we give judges some more discretion, that we can avoid some of those situations and we don't need to, once again, we need to punish people for the crimes that they commit, but once they commit them and they pay their debt to society, let's welcome them back and not to continue to punish them for a lifetime.
Hi, my name is Gina, and go along with the question about reform, what about restoration of voting rights? When people serve their time and they want to come back and join society. Right now, it's almost impossible.
Sure, and I appreciate you asking that question. So another thing that's happening right now that you may have seen in the news is the CRC, the Constitutional Revision Commission. So every 20 years in Florida, the governor, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House get to appoint people to serve on the CRC. There are 37 people that hear testimony all over the state of Florida from constituents and get ideas that will end up being constitutional amendments that get put on the ballot next year that the citizens of Florida will be able to vote on. One of those will be, I anticipate, an amendment to restore voting rights. There is a bill, that's a Senator Perry, or no, Thurston, one of the senators in proposed legislation to do that. I'm also going to be coming out with a bill, as I mentioned, I do civil rights restorations. And, the Office of Executive Clemency right now, so if you want to apply to get your rights restored either through a pardon or clemency, they have more than 22,000 applications pending. I have a client who's been waiting since 2008. The oldest pending case that they testified a few weeks ago was 11 years. So in some cases, you have to wait 5 to 8 years post-sentence, the end of your conviction or sentence or restitution, before you can even apply. Then they're taking another 8 to 11 years to process the applications. because it's considered an act of legislative grace. So I'm going to be introducing legislation that would allow individuals to go to have a judicial restoration, be able to go before a judge. Now, the caveat is this, that I'm a constitutionalist. When I was campaigning, I talked incessantly about the Constitution because it's the foundation of our legal system. And there's not a hierarchy of constitutional rights. The first is no more important than the second, or the third, or the fifth, or the ninth, or the 10th. So my bill would restore all constitutional rights. Or so the judge would have to grant them all or deny them all. They can't pick and choose. And in the legislators that I've spoken to, both senators and members of the House, Democrats and Republicans, just about everyone I've spoken to knows someone who has had their rights taken away from them, whether that's a family member or a friend. And so I think there is going to be some movement this year, and I surveyed all 49 other states and see what they're doing. So this is something that's already being done in Virginia and Ohio and other states where they have the ability for a judicial restoration. So whether or not my bill passes or not, I don't care. It's no pride of authorship, but it's a sort of a conversation, and I think this is a conversation that we're starting to have as a state, and it does have bipartisan support.
Look for that. There's an independent group that's gathering petitions to do it separately. I think they've already gathered 200 signatures. 650 is the magic number to advance it to the ballot. But also, as Ford mentioned, the CRC, the first phase was introduced to do an automatic restoration. They also came out today with grandparents' rights. For grandparents, if you're a grandparent and never been denied the right to see your kids, I had breakfast with a gentleman today who, it'll make you cry. It'll make you cry. His son passed away, and yet he can't see he's punished by the loss of his son, but he's also punished by that he's unable to see his granddaughter. So we're looking at, that's another proposal. There was dozens of proposals. They advance. It's almost like the legislature. So all of these proposals will be heard in committee with the Constitutional Revision Committee. And then at the very end, they have to have 22 votes of the 37. So that's a pretty good hurdle to overcome. So if they do that, then it'll go to us, the electorate, next year under the 2018 ballot. And if 60% of Floridians say yes, then it'll be the law of the land, and that would be an automatic restoration or whatever the final version of that is. Yes, ma'am. I got a microphone.
I can talk like,
Okay.
My name is Maureen, and I'm an OBGYN nurse.
Is it Maureen?
Maureen.
Maureen. Okay, Maureen. What say you, Maureen?
I am an OBGYN nurse practitioner, and I have some questions and concerns about the legislation I believe you submitted for crisis pregnancy centers.
Okay.
And some questions about the funding for a faith-based program that is not staffed by professionals when we're talking about taking away funding from Planned Parenthood, which is professionals.
Maureen, thank you very much for that question. So I have a bill that currently we fund already. We fund a pregnancy support centers. And my bill, Bill 444, I happen to know the number, would bring those into our base budget, would bring those in. Right now they're funded extra by every year, so those would be brought in. Maureen, I think it's important that we have a place that people in pregnancy crisis can go, and these places would focus on adoption and having the baby, as opposed to other alternatives that the place you mentioned
But that's not how they advertise.
would take care of. So I just think of the place for being bringing in life, and that's what that network would do.
But that's not how they advertise themselves.
Okay, you're saying they don't advertise themselves.
They hold themselves out to be medical professionals doing ultrasounds on women and giving them medical information, having a professional staff, although if you look at the one here at the beaches, there is not one medical person, including the director of clinical services, that lists any letters after their name that says they're a nurse, a counselor, a physician. There's nobody who's an ultrasonographer, and it says we do options counseling,
Right.
which includes abortion counseling, and they say that they do, and yet in their mission it says,
Yeah. They
our
shouldn't
mission
do.
is to.
Can y'all hear her okay? Did she need the microphone? Y'all can hear her, so I want to make sure that...
So my there being life-affirming. My issue is that they hold themselves out to be something else, and that somehow, as a state, we're funding that with my money.
Right.
That's my issue, not that somebody has...
Very good. If, and they do it now, we fund them right now. We fund them right now, and the bill would continue
But
funding
a
them.
smaller amount, correct?
If they do, well, it's subject to appropriation by each and every year of the legislature. So whatever the legislature deems appropriate for that year, it could go up or down. If they're doing any medical procedures, it must be done. It would be against state law for them to have anybody that's not a licensed medical personnel to do that specific procedure within their scope.
You can see.
So that's the, and there's not, I mean, they can have, you could say medical personnel if they bring those medical personnel in, and I think that's my understanding of how they're operating, but if somebody is doing something they shouldn't do, then we need to call the appropriate authorities to bring them in line. And I'll be glad to do that. I'll make the call myself.
Well, but if we're going to fund them on a state level, are they going to be subject to the same regulatory pressure that Planned Parenthood is, that the health department clinics are?
Well, if they're doing medical procedures, the purpose of that network is to give options in pregnancy. I think they pulled their weight. We have funded them for over a dozen years. Forget how many years we funded them, and I think they have earned the right to be a part of our budget going forward, to give options for people that want to do something different. So very good. Yes, sir.
Mike Stang, Jacksonville Beach. I heard that it's going to be another tough budget year. What tends to happen, I've had to sit with Mr. Forbes through his budget meetings and many city council meetings. And what happens a lot of times is the legislature passes a bunch of stuff that's unfunded, which means it comes back to the cities to have to pay for it, which means that we get a tax increase like we did this year. What is going on this year?
I got just the person to answer that.
George, are there a lot of unfunded mandates from the state? Do we?
I think the state there are. That wasn't the reason for our budget concerns this year, but there are a lot of
I mean, I know I don't like unfunded mandates from the federal government, and
right.
You know, so
it's getting the can down.
It is a problem. It is a problem that everyone who's in elective office is making these tough. Nobody wants tax increases, but nobody wants to pay for services. I mean, it's a dilemma at every level of government, and you know, we've tried to be fiscally responsible, putting money in reserves. Just this past week, the Speaker of the House said that we're not going to dip into our reserves because it affects our credit rating as a state, which we have a very good one, and the amount how we can borrow money by not dipping into those reserves for non-emergent items. If and when those unfunded mandates come up, I will oppose them because it's not right to just kick it down the road.
So thank you, gentlemen, very much. We really appreciate you being here with us tonight, taking the time to answer all of these questions. If anybody would like to talk with them individually after the meeting, they'll be here for a few more minutes. I'd like to remind you, Wednesday, December 6th is our next meeting. Please get your nominations in for the Give Back donation by November 3rd. Close end of the day, November 3rd. And I believe Chris Hoffman wanted to make a quick announcement.
I just wanted to let you know, since you're already here, if you missed on your way in, on your way out, the Friends of the Beaches Branch Library has purchased and installed a hanging system, and the first exhibit they have displayed is the Beaches Museum's Hurricane Dora exhibit. So it's really interesting. It's worth a stop by. It'll be up to the end of hurricane season, which we all know when that is. And hopefully we'll have more opportunity to show some of the Beaches Museum's history exhibits, some art exhibits, and great programming throughout the year here at our library.
And just like I said, remind you, December 6th is our next meeting. And, oh, that's right. And anybody who's able-bodied and willing, please help us pick up the chairs, and so we can get everything situated after the meeting. Thank you so much.